In the early 2010s, Nigerian youth began using social media as a tool for change. What started as an online outrage quickly evolved into major movements like Occupy Nigeria 2012 and EndSARS 2020. Today, young Nigerians still use the internet to demand justice, hold leaders accountable, and shape national conversations. But the big question is all this digital energy leading to real, lasting change? Welcome, and thank you for joining us on Youth Connect, brought to you by Trust TV. I am Fatimah Ahmed Musa. Now let's go on a quick break, and when we return, you get to meet my guest. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Now, joining me in the studio is Right Honorable Samuel Peter Aye, former Deputy Speaker, Nigerian Youth Parliament, 5th session. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Fatima, for having me.
So, we are talking about activism. In your own words, what does activism mean? And for, maybe just normal Nigerians that may have or want to know more about it.
Well, I think in simple terms, activism simply is speaking out for people who cannot speak for themselves, and then using various mediums to hold leadership to account. Simply put, that's what activism is. So speaking out for people who cannot speak for themselves, and then using whatever platform is available to hold leaders to account.
So it's as good as giving voice to the voiceless.
Yes.
So has the internet activism breached, this widening gap between youth and the government? Because usually activism starts, like you said, trying to hold the leaders accountable. So it starts from somewhere. So do you think the internet has breached that gap?
Well, the internet has really done well by bridging that gap because there has been this serious disconnect between the people and our leaders. And then most of the times we don't have the opportunities to engage with them physically in person, because for most of them, they don't even come for our town halls, meetings, and all of that. So the social media, the internet has really breached that gap and has given Nigerians, young Nigerians particularly, the opportunity to be able to hold leaders to account and to engage them in conversations that matters. So, but
how has social media, changed the way youth actually express anger or even seek justice?
Well, before now, just like I said earlier, for people to be able to air their displeasure or air their anger against leaders or whatever, there needed to be a physical meeting where you bring people together and then they use the opportunity to air their opinions, to air their views, and express maybe their pleasures or displeasures to our leaders. But then, because this used to be very difficult to come by, and sometimes because of the constraint of space and then distance, many people are unable to come together with these platforms to speak. So, but with the advent of social media and the internet, it has made it really easy, because not minding wherever you are, you can connect to an ongoing conversation on the internet and then get your voices heard by the people who need to hear these voices. So
what would you say, the activism that we saw play out, like I rightly mentioned earlier, Occupy Nigeria, that happened in 2012, and then also the EndSARS 2020. Do you think activism has actually, led to that protest? And do you think we have actually gained that justice that we deserved?
Well, for the 2012 Occupy Nigeria, it all started like a joke. Via the internet, the online medias, where people started speaking out against the removal of fuel subsidy then.
Yeah.
And then, like joke, it gathered momentum across the country. And before you know, it led to actions where people came out on the streets and occupied Nigeria to register their displeasure about the removal of the fuel subsidy as at then. So this activism has actually helped in a great way to achieve certain things, because if you look back to 2012, after the Occupy Nigeria protest, the government of the day had to take some steps back on the issue of removal of fuel subsidy. So I would say it really achieved its aim for that purpose. And then coming down to 2020, you know, at some point in time in 2020, many people thought that the young Nigerians were just making noise on the internet. They were making noise on the social media. So, but when they saw how it was going, they knew it was not business as usual, and that young Nigerians were serious about putting an end to police brutality. You saw how that protest gained momentum across the country. Though it led to the immediate disbandment of SARS as a den, but not very serious reforms have actually taken place in that aspect. Maybe because the cry and the outcry at that time maybe was lowered, and then momentum came down and people relaxed back into their shells. Maybe so, but then it has really helped in achieving certain things that we have seen as a people, especially among young people in Nigeria.
Okay, so do you think grassroots mobilization is still essential for online activism to succeed?
Yes, it is, because the mass majority of our people are the grassroots. And with the advent of the internet and then the widespread coverage across several areas in Nigeria, it has actually helped in mobilizing young people across board, whether in our local communities. There are communities that before now, you hardly had internet access. So, but now, with the widespread of network coverage and all, these people are beginning to get connected to the online world, and then whatever is happening online from anywhere across the country, young people are able to connect. So it has really helped in mobilizing grassroots people for activism where they need to get their voices heard.
So what pathways can the government create for young people, to be included in decision-making process?
For this, there's this common saying that there's nothing for us without us. I think the best thing that government can do is to get young people involved in decision making, especially decisions that affect the young people directly or indirectly. Most of the times, our elderly people believe that as young people, we don't have what it takes to be on the table, to contribute our own quota and then add our voices to policy development programs and projects that would affect us. But gone are those days. You can see what young Nigerians are doing fantastically well. So I think that era has passed, and our leaders should be deliberate about getting young people involved. So, but then, we won't just get involved by wishing to be involved. There's an act of parliament, the Not Too Young to Run Act. At the point in time, it gained momentum when the campaign was on. When the campaign was on. And you could see how young people across the country volunteered and joined voices with the civil society organizations that were fronting this issue. And today we have that as a law permitting younger people to be able to contest for offices because the age limit has been reduced. And if you go to the House of Reps, for example, you'd find a member who is 30. I think the youngest is 30 years old from, I think, Kebbi or so, or Jigawa, if I'm not mistaken. He's 30 years old. So, and then there are other young people who are coming in. I think as young people, we must go beyond just demanding that government recognizes and brings us on board and then take meaningful action to get involved. Just like somebody would say, if there's no chair for us on the table, we can carry our own chair and create a space on the table and then sit on the table. By so doing, we get our voices heard and then we also contribute to meaningful development of our nation. Yeah,
so, talking about the Not Too Young to Run, like you said, I mean, even though it's a law, but still, we still see that young people are not still being given the chance to participate when it comes to politics. But how can we prevent online movements from being hijacked, by either personal or political agenda?
Preventing online movement that could maybe materialize in physical meetings where we had to go, maybe, for instance, on protests, on walks and all of that. It would be very difficult to actually stop it from being hijacked, in the sense that you have people from different walks of life, for example, coming together to agitate for one thing or the other. And because it is an open engagement, right? You can't really regulate who comes into the movement. So, but then there are few things that can be done. For example, if young people here in FCT, for example, decides to embark on a protest, right? We're going to call out young people from across the 6 area councils in FCT. So, but then before we get to that level, we should be able to get pass from the security agents and ensure that we have them on ground to help us control the movement. Because most of the times when you don't have security agents on ground to control, that's when some other elements can just come in, and before you know, the whole thing is disrupted and then it becomes something else.
Yeah.
And then also maybe when we come together like that and sensitize ourselves, it will be important to let the people who are involved in whatever movement it is to know that whoever sees anyone trying to cause any form of problem or mayhem should immediately report, so that the process is not hijacked and then turned into something else. But then, being hijacked by political leaders, again, I would say, I remember some last time when I was here, we talked about weaponizing poverty in Nigeria. You could have a group of people who are demanding for maybe accountability or so from leaders. And because there is a section of people who think that they are hungry and they need to eat, they need to be fed. Some of these our leaders have known that there are people like that, and what they do is they single them out.
Yeah, feed on.
You understand? Yeah. And then they capitalize on the fact that they are poor, they need financial resources, they need material resources, and then they get people like that to sabotage the process. So I think for us to be able to prevent all of this is to ensure that young people of Nigeria have economic power.
Yeah, so but what's your take? Now, this is actually a bit personal to me, because I've seen a lot of people, coming out to post online, but then end up not taking any action with regards to, whatever accountability or justice that we keep demanding. Do you think they are also adding to the problem of the youths?
Of course they are. It is not just enough to be an activist via the internet or online. There comes a time where we need to leave the online platforms and then engage physically. Let's say, for example, the Not Too Young to Run Act, when it was still a bill in the National Assembly, there were several engagements where civil society groups were called, youth groups were called to lend their voices to that bill that was going to affect young people. You can imagine that such meetings were organized, and then the young people who are agitating online or on the internet didn't show up, didn't turn up to lend their physical voices to those bills. Today, we wouldn't have a Not Too Young to Run Act. So it is not just enough to call on our leaders online. But when the need arises for us to be physical on ground to show that, yes, we are serious about these things, as young people, we should engage in that.
All right, let's go on a quick break. And when we return, we'll continue this discussion. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Now, there's this belief that, young politicians are often used by, as tools by the older politicians. Is it true, being a young politician yourself?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not true. There are young people in politics who are used by the older people. And like I said earlier, sometimes it is because they have not really built themselves on ideologies and values. You hear comments like, leave politics for politicians.
Leave politics for the older politicians.
No, leave politics for politicians. Now, when they say that comment, what they are telling you invariably is, young people who are in that space is not for you. Yeah. Yes. There are people who are masters of the game, in quote. There are people who have been here for a long time. So they are the ones that should call the shots, whereas it is not actually so. But we end up finding young people who have not built themselves on ideologies and on principles being used. But if we continue in that circle, we would never get any meaningful development as a people, and especially as young people in Nigeria. You can imagine young Nigerians clamoring for involvement of more young people in politics and in governance. And then you have another group of young people coming to protest in support of the older politicians over and against the younger ones who are clamoring for more space for young people in politics and governance. That's counterproductive. That's like young people fighting themselves for a cause that all young people should be united for. So, like I said earlier, there are people, yes, that are cheap, and then they cheaply give themselves out to be used by older politicians to keep on perpetuating themselves in leadership.
Yeah. So, but how, another set of people that, actually sort of either make it happen when it comes to activism or not make it happen at the same time is the social media influencers. Do you think the influencers should, use their platform beyond just, hashtags or trending hashtags rather for a real change?
Yes. When you look at social media influencers, whether or not we like it, they wield a very great level of influence on what happens in our society. Many of them have millions of young people following them. Now, beyond the hashtags on the social media, on the internet, a lot of times when it comes to taking real action, like seeing people on ground, right, you hardly find these influencers present. But let's go back to 2020, the NSAT protest. Many of them were on ground, right? We saw a lot of them. And because of their presence out there on the streets, many young people were pulled out, even those who ordinarily wouldn't come out for such kind of a protest. But because they are celebrities, their influencers are out there, many of them came out. So let us take this activism beyond the social media and hashtags to the point where we are now calling for real change, and then we are coming together as young people of Nigeria to demand for this change.
All right, so another question I would love to ask you is, do you think the government takes online agitations seriously, or does it just see it as a temporary outpost?
Well, sometimes they take online activism seriously, and then at other times they don't. Take, for example, the presidential pardon that was granted, that was just announced. You saw the outburst of Nigerians on the category of persons who were captured in that presidential pardon. And I think just last night and this morning, I'm now seeing some news that from the Attorney General that is still under review.
Yeah.
Now, this thing, I believe, is still under review because of the outburst of Nigerians on the internet, on the social media. So there are so many things that the young people of Nigeria have been able to gain using social media. Let's say, for example, we know that a budget has been passed, national budget, and then, we know that this and this and this were budgeted for, and the monies have been released for those things. But then, you now realize that in your own area, what was said to have been budgeted for and monies released has not been done. With the social media, it makes it a lot more easy to just go to the site, see what is happening, take pictures, make videos, and then upload. And before you know it, the persons who are saddled with the responsibility of doing that thing are called on board to answer questions concerning that. Let's say, for instance, the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road. The Minister of Works was on Arise TV. And, it resulted to some funny arguments here and there on national TV. So, but then, you can see that many Nigerians are getting interested in these conversations. And it is because of what the platform that the social media gives us to lend our voices to these things. And that is why most of our leaders are careful with the things they do.
Yeah. So, but what do you think is missing in today's digital activism that could make it more effective?
What is missing is simple. One, sometimes some informations posted are not
real,
authentic, they are not verifiable, they are not verified. And secondly, beyond just social media, there comes a time that we need to act in person, right? For example, we're clamoring for inclusion of young people in governance. And then there is a call, or there's an invitation for a public hearing on constitutional review, right? And this is an opportunity that young people should jump on to lend our voices to the review of our constitution that would open up the space for more young people to come into governance and politics. But unfortunately, many of the people who join online, right, to call for all of these things when we are now required to come in person, right, and make presentations and make proposals, you don't find many of those people there. So if we begin to put out information on social media, on the internet, that are true, that are verifiable, right, it will go a long way, and the government will begin to take us seriously. Now, in this era where we have artificial intelligence,
exactly,
people can just manufacture things.
Yeah.
And if you are not careful to really observe and be certain that this is real, you might mistake something that is not real to be real, and then you get yourself into trouble. I believe there are many young people who have been charged to court for defamation of characters and so, because of certain information that found their way online, and then young people just jump on them without verifying whether they are right or wrong. So if we begin to verify information that we put out there online, and then we begin to take necessary action. Let's say, for instance, area council elections in the FCT are coming up. And then as young people, we keep complaining that we don't have leaders who have us in mind and all. This is another time for us as young people that make up over 70% of the voter population to come out and decide who becomes our chairman in the area councils and who become our councillors in our various wards. Now, when we do this, we will be taken seriously. Well, you can imagine that in a ward where we have over 7,000 young voters registered, and then when elections are done, the entire election result is reading 1,200. So you know that the young people are still not serious about getting involved. So we must go beyond social media, we must go beyond hashtags and begin to engage the systems so that the change that we want, we would see them take shape.
All right, so I would love to ask also this question, like being a young politician and, like you rightly mentioned, the area council elections are coming and we are seeing the 2027 also drawing closer by the day. What do we look out for when it comes to youth participation and, for people like yourself being being in the Youth Parliament, what do you think we should expect from the youth coming 2027 elections?
Now, for the 2027 elections, what I expect as a person from young Nigerians, right, is that enough of all of the social media activism. Get involved. Like I said earlier, there is nothing for us without us. Now, if we don't contribute to the process through which our leaders emerge, that is election, then I don't think we have any right whatsoever to hold them to account. We must be able to come out, participate actively in the election process. And when I say actively in the election process, it's not about being hired by one politician or the other to go and disrupt the electoral process and all of that. No, get involved in campaigns, meaningful campaigns for the candidates that you have objectively looked at and have seen to be competent to take up an office. Engage in campaigns for candidates like that. Engage in campaigns for political party whose ideology aligns with the development that we want to see as a people, especially as young Nigerians. A political party that gives space and room for young people to grow and then maximize their potentials. These are the kinds of engagement that we want to be seeing going forward, but not young people who would just rally around old politicians because of what they get from them. I think it is high time we go beyond that point. For the area council elections that are coming, there are quite a number of young people who are contesting for councillors. For area council chairman, I can't say for sure because according to Nigeria's youth policy, if you're over 30, you're no longer a young person by the youth policy. So, but I believe that there are younger persons who are less than 30 who are contesting for councillorship in various wards across the FCT.
Do you think they'll win?
Now, if they get the support of the young people, they would. They would. Because after the young people who have the highest number of voters, the women. The women. So if we get the support of our mothers, the women, and we get the support of young people like ourselves, I'm telling you, young people would win. But then we're not just calling for young people to contest for elections, but young people who know what is required of them when they get into office. Yeah. Young people who can effectively represent the youth population and then make our elderly people see that as young people, we are not just out there for trouble. We also have the ability to serve the people and to deliver on good governance.
Well, you've said it all. Thank you so much, retired Honorable Samuel Peter, for taking your time to be on the show and also contribute your quota.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we've come to the end of today's episode. Let me leave you with this message. Internet activism has empowered Nigerian youths with a louder voice, but its true value lies in converting online momentum into real-world reform. If you found today's episode insightful, please like, share, and subscribe to Trust TV Live on YouTube and follow our social media platforms for more news, programs, and documentaries. Join us again next week as we continue exploring issues that matter to young Nigerians. I'm Fatimah Ahmed Musa. Thanks for watching.